flag of the
of the United States of America,
and to the
and
republic
to the republic which stands
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty
justice
and
for
justice
all.
for all.
Thank you. Let's see if I can finagle this so I can see the agenda and the screen at the same time. That appears to have worked. All right, so I did not receive notification of any public comment. I assume that would have come my way. I think that someone internally as well as Mr. Champagne gets notification of that. So I don't believe I have had any public comment. And do I need to make a call for it in the public? I don't even know if the public is attached to us right now.
I'm not sure on that. I would defer to Vonda if the public is attached.
I do see that it says we're live.
I believe we're streaming.
Okay. But I don't know that I can see external. If we look at participants, Vonda, can we see people who are in the public and who are on the live stream?
That would be Derek, but I don't think we got any public comments
Okay.
before the 6 o'clock window. I think it was 6.
Well, Derek's there. We could ask Derek.
Yeah, so it's streaming live,
Great.
I believe.
Yeah, I've got the signal up. This as it is. Don't know that I can see.
Yes.
Hear
it
you.
is streaming.
Great. All right, so no public comments, so we will move on to the financial management summary. And I'll open it up to Beth and Ed for any questions, or Dave, if you wanted to kick us off, please feel free to do so, whatever you guys would like.
So if you'd like, I can run through the summary pretty quick and then just kind of open it for questions.
Sure, thank you.
Being my first meeting, I tried to follow the same format that Sherry did. I've met Sherry before. She's a good egg. So balance sheet, revenues, and cash flows. In summary, we've received a number of grants over the past 12 months, CRF, ESSER 1, ESSER 2. Kind of looking through the expenditures, certified staff is in a favorable position, and I'm going to go over that in a second because it actually is a negative, and I'm going to explain why. Non-certified staff continues to be on track. I'm learning your employee benefits. There is a transfer of workman's comp to the town board for 2021 in amount of $150,000. I'm sure you're aware of that. Transportation, we did receive a credit from All-Star, even though we had a little snafu earlier in the week. Tuition is also in the negative, but I'm going to explain that as well. Supplies, equipment, again, some of this is covered through the ESSER grants. So if you get to page 2 of the summary, if you see that certified staff, it looks like it's negative $229,000, which is true, but, and there's always a but, CRF was awarded to Seymour in an amount of $1.4 million. Before I got here, we'd already drawn down $929,000, so almost $1 million of that. In February last week, I drew down another $262,000, which is primarily personnel, which effectively eliminates your deficit in personnel for certified staff. We also have an ESSER 1 grant awarded for $229,000, of which there was another $10,000 remaining to draw down, which I did. Again, personnel related. ESSER 2, the district's been awarded more than $1 million. It's $1,001,000. We have not drawn down anything. We've actually haven't finished completing the application for that grant. But knowing that's out there, hopefully that'll alleviate any kind of fears about deficits in staffing or benefits. Moving down to,
could we pause? Could we stay up at the certified staff level and or any staff, custodial, certified or non-certified? Any questions there? I have some, but I wanted to give the forum to Ed and Beth first to ask any questions of the personnel line items.
I'm fine. You could go ahead, Beth, if you would like.
Yeah, I'm good for right now.
So I would have expected that 282,000 there because that is the distance teachers, but I'm a little bit surprised to see administration at a $78,000 deficit, as well as nursing services. I'm not surprised. I am a little bit surprised at the amount of, I would assume that's overtime in the, I think it was the custodial services. I mean, custodial services, $90,000. So if you could talk about the administrative deficit, and the custodial deficit.
The custodial is easy to explain, but a big part of the newest drawdown was related to custodial overtime. So you're going to see that evaporate when those funds are applied, when we receive them. I cannot speak intelligently about the administration. I can try to learn that component on the fly, but I can't speak to that at this point.
Okay.
And these, just a quick question, these encumbrances are through March 31st?
The encumbrances are through the end of the year
Okay,
on payroll and benefits.
okay.
So Mrs. Tenza, could you speak to the administrative deficit?
You know, I really can't. It's not funny, but you know, I saw that this morning, and David and I connected on my way home today, and I said I think our board's going to ask about that. So I should get an A+ for knowing you well. And you know, the superintendent was not in today, so we haven't had a chance, the three of us, to kind of talk about
Okay.
that, which I definitely think we can do tomorrow.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I can dive into that just a little bit. I while we're on this meeting, I've pulled up that particular line item. And it looks as if, and just kind of quickly speaking, it looks as if just about every position in administration has an encumbrance of more than what was budgeted, which leads me to believe that the encumbrances are probably larger than the actual payout's going to actually be. But I will dive into that as soon as this meeting's over and get you some updates on that as well.
That's great. Thank you.
It doesn't look like it's specific to an individual. It looks like it's across the board. So I think that's a configuration issue.
In other words, maybe the encumbrance number is higher than it should be. Is it hypothesis?
That's my gut.
Yeah.
I need to confirm that, but that's what it looks like to me.
Okay, thank you. That might also be the case for guidance services.
Yes.
Because I don't think that anyone there would get paid overtime, but certainly the nurses, they get paid overtime. The custodial services, that's higher than I would have thought. I understand that there was more cleaning, but I also know that we were closed a whole lot. So that one's a little bit surprising. If we could just check and make sure that number is accurate too, that'd be great. And then
I think your gut is right, though. I think the encumbrances are more than what it's actually obligated,
okay.
which doesn't surprise me with switching to a new system.
Okay, then we'll let it go and we'll look forward to seeing where you net out with that. That's great. Thank you.
It's a good question, though.
Okay. All right. So I interrupted your flow, but I'm glad that we talked about the staff encumbrances and supposed or seeming overages that aren't. So I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
No worries at all. Just kind of jumping down, I kind of stopped at the tuition. This is primarily special ed private facilities. It looks as if we're in the negative about $500,000. That's not actually true. Right. As you know, we get an excess cost grant back from the state for 4.5 times per student cost. And it's about 70 cents on the dollar above that. I can tell you that the March application, which is about 80% of the special ed funds, was $549, which is what the grant was awarded for, which will fully cover that deficit. So you're actually in the good there. Plus, there's another 20% coming towards the end of the year,
which is very unusual to be in the good there. So that's really good news.
No, special ed's such a tough one too. I mean, it's really tough to budget for, and it's up and down. Sometimes it goes in your favor, and sometimes goes against you. And you're absolutely, you couldn't have said that any better. It's just one of those unknowns. It's really difficult to plan for.
Okay.
Panning down. Let's see where we're at. Tuition, supplies. Again, there is some ESSER money in supplies, but not a lot. equipment, dues and fees in line. Right now, you're good $1.1 million towards the end of the year. I'm sure there are going to be more. I'm sure that number will come down as we get closer to the end of the year. But again, if we do get tight, there's ESSER 2 that's sitting there at $1.1 million that we haven't applied back to this budget. So the long and the short is you're actually in a pretty good spot. We do have some questions about the encumbrances on some pay, but I think we're all right.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and getting the encumbrances right is obviously it's so important because I mean, well, it's just important, period. But also as we get closer to the end of the year, there will be an increasing amount of tension, attention, and perhaps tension. That was a Freudian slip. Looking at that $1.1 million right now that's there, looking like we're going to have that in surplus. So we will absolutely, every month that we get closer to the end of the year, our taxpayers and our town government will expect us to be, you know, forthright and transparent about what we expect to have in terms of a surplus so that we can plan collaboratively and see where that gets us. So just
and I think that's a really good position to take. I think that while it's typical this time of year to show a fairly healthy surplus, it will draw down. But what I'll try to do before the next meeting is get you a reasonable estimate of what we'll probably finish the year with. April, May is usually a good time to do that. And you can talk about at the board level, what you'd like to do with that surplus, if you want to pre-fund capital projects or deficits or expenditures for the following year, that's fine. Return it to town is fine as well. There's a lot of options you have as a board.
Yeah, but none of which we can take unilaterally, right? I don't know if that's, all of it has to be approved by the Board of Finance, is my understanding. And
well, yes and no. You are absolutely allowed to fully expend your entire budget that was given to you, and that's at the Board of Ed's discretion.
Yep.
Anything regarding the 2% reserve fund is usually a collaboration or pre-paying for future expenditures. So your encumbrances is typically done at the board level. Doesn't necessarily need Board of Finance approval per se, but it definitely works better if you have good collaboration between the boards. So yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Because as you probably won't be surprised to hear, we've never been in a situation where we've actually had a meaningful surplus. So it is
it's been a really strange year. It's not often that we get to this point in a year where there is a surplus, but because of the way things ran, and there's certain things that have been under budget, substitutes, things like that. And then with the additional grants that have been allocated to Board of Ed, it's a lot of boards are in the same spot. There are certain things that have definitely been more expensive than anticipated. Food services is one of those that has typically been running high. But there's other things like transportation and other things that are grant expendable that are running in that favor. So it's definitely an unusual time, which is a good time for communication.
Yep. Where do we see, here it is, our security services? That is our SSOs. Is that correct? Or do we know that doesn't include any SRO that we give to the police department? I don't think. I'm saying it with a question mark at the end. So is security services line 130? Is that strictly our two SSOs and our security director?
I will tell you in 30 seconds. This is line 132.0. No, I'm sorry.
Looks like it says object 130, but I'm gonna have to scroll over again.
I got you. Security services 130. $195,000 budget.
Yeah.
So in your security services, you have security services 121, 37, 37. the components of, I believe that's one position. So I think there's 3 positions here.
Right.
And
That's what Kristen's saying. We have a director of security and we have 2 school
Assistants.
security officers at the elementary
that's
level.
exactly right. There's 3 positions budgeted here. There's nothing else in this, in account 130 besides those 3 positions. Again, the encumbrances look high based on this time of year. So
Mhm.
even though it looks like a $12,000 deficit, I don't think that's 100%. I will go back and true up the encumbrance component.
Great, thank you. Where would we see in our budget any payments that we have to make to the police department for them being at our events, or do we not pay? And this might, I mean, David, is perfectly fine if you don't know the answer to this. I should know it more than you, but there's obviously a lot of moving pieces. But I just don't recall what our arrangement is. Maybe Ed or Vonda, you remember, with the town, if the police come in, they're at a basketball game or they're at another student event.
Okay.
Well, what I can remember from being the AD, Kristen, was that at the sporting events, obviously it comes out of the athletic account. I'm not sure if we use them that much for a drama play or other things in that line.
Or
But I
graduation.
do know that we used to have 4 or 5 police officers graduation. Last year we didn't have that.
So typically the way that will work is the police will send the Board of Ed an invoice, and that won't come out of a salary line. That will come out of whatever program it is, like athletics or graduation, depending on where you budget for those particular items, it'll hit those. So that would be a graduation expense or an athletics expense, but you won't necessarily see that in a salary or personnel line.
Yeah. And then would we see that reflected in the check register? A check to Seymour Police Department?
Yes, you would.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Beth or Ed, any other?
Yeah, well, I'm just curious, and I might have misheard what Dave said about the transportation and the credit from All-Star. Did I mishear you say something? There was, I don't know if I want to say issue, concern with that at the beginning, or did I just not hear that properly?
So I hope I don't open up a can of worms here, and I will just, I know we had a challenge earlier last week with drivers being available. All-Star, I've worked with All-Star at multiple districts over the last 8 years. Good company, great owners, John and Leslie before, good people. One of the challenges they've had over the last year and a half is driver retention. Many districts didn't feel like they should pay 100% of the transportation costs over last year. Some districts repurposed drivers to do food deliveries and whatnot. They have about 900 employees. At the beginning of this year, they had 700. And that's not necessarily financial related. They have drivers of a certain age that just didn't feel comfortable coming back to work. So they've really been scrambling, trying to find good quality drivers. And I think when the second round of shots came in, there was a lot of folks that get sick for a day or so. I think that hit this particular district pretty directly, and they didn't have the staff to cover it. So we ended up doing a remote day or canceling a school day because of that. And I don't think that was received well, but I also understand the other side of that story. And this is one of those things. It's an unusual time, and I think you have to kind of roll with it. But it's also something that I know they're aware of and working hard to fix.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Beth, any questions?
In the beginning of the report, it mentions kind of an expenditure spreadsheet regarding the grant funding. Is that something that you're working on, David?
I am. There's actually multiple expenditure worksheets. There was one that was put together for a CRF grant, which is your largest grant. Briefly, your district, Seymour, our district, was awarded 1.4 million. $929,000 was drawn down by February, leaving a balance of about $470,000. When we applied for these grants, I think the hard part, especially of CRF, is making sure it was COVID related. And this is an unusual grant because this is a grant where you can't draw it down until you've actually had the expenditure. So we have to submit invoices of expenditures paid. So you're kind of guessing when you submit for the grant, and then you're trying to align expenditures to go with your original grant application. But nice thing about this grant is they allow you to repurpose funds as needed after the fact. And that's exactly what we've done. So we found an additional $262,000 worth of grant eligible expenditures. And we've repurposed about $56,000 from personnel that we weren't able to fill over to supplies that we actually did purchase. So that was approved last week. There is still a balance on there, and we are looking hard to find other qualified expenses. One of the things with the CRF grant specifically is they had to be expenses that were done through 12/30 of 2020 and nothing past that. So they have to be expenditures that are grant eligible, that were part of our original submission, that were paid before 12/30. So going through there and trying to find additional expenses does take time. And if they're in a category that we do think qualifies, we can go back and ask for an allocation. And the state's been pretty flexible on that. ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 are a lot more flexible going forward. But this is one of those things in the dark ages of things are really bad and we want to get you a lot of money quickly. They put these programs out there sometimes a little bit before a cart before a horse. So we're going back at this point trying to true these things up the best we can.
So SR1 was roughly 230,000, if I remember correctly.
It was 229. That's right.
Okay, and that was, we were allocating permanent building subs and distance learning teachers to that, right? And that would expire the end of this school year? Or those expenditures have to be spent before June 30th, or what?
They don't. ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 have a lot more flexibility.
Okay.
On the ESSER 1, you have 169,000 in salaries and 60 in benefits.
Okay.
So yes, we are trying to encumber the ESSER 1 funds. Technically, you have 2 years to do that. But we're trying very hard to encumber those now. We did already encumber 218,000 before I arrived, and there was an additional 10,000 in May that we were able to encumber, and I did draw that money down. So we
Grant 2, what was that
Grant
about?
2. Grant 2 has been interesting. The state has given us guidance on a number, and then came back and gave us new guidance, and it has something called a holdback. So they kind of said, this is how much money we think we have. And then they came back and said, this is actually how much we have. For Seymour, the holdback amount was about $50,000. This grant, our submission technically isn't due until April 19th. It's been pushed back a couple times. Because it's a shifting environment and the state keeps changing their mind, I am one to kind of wait until the week or so before and say, okay, this is what we actually want. Because if I do it a month ago, they're going to say, well, this is a different amount of money. And then you kind of have to redo everything 3 times like we did at CRF. So Vonda and I have sat down and gone over the ESSER 2 allocations and the holdback amounts. And there's actually 2 separate grants that we have to submit for ESSER 2. A little bit more work on the district side, but well worth it. And we have not submitted or drawn down anything on ESSER 2 yet. But we do have 2 years to utilize those funds.
And roughly what's the total of that second submission?
1.01 million.
Okay,
It's
so that's
just about a little over $1 million, of which about 49,000 is the holdback, which is actually the second grant.
Okay. And those priorities of expenditures, roughly, is that the kind of, given that the grant is due in a week, are those mostly salaries or their supplies? How is that, like, those expenditures been prioritized in terms of the request?
I'm going to kick this one to Vonda.
Yeah,
She
but-
smiled, so I think she.
Yeah, but before Vonda even answers that, we were shared a listing in an Excel of what those planned expenditures would be. Beth, so Vonda can speak to that, and I'll just put it out there. I had a question that I had asked our Mr. Stramello about, does the board get to collaborate on this? Because we haven't really collaborated, but so I don't really understand who's like in charge and has final say as to what we spend this money on. So with that said, I'm sure there's been an update, Vonda, from the expenditure list that we were shared previously by Sherry, or maybe not.
There has a little bit, yes. So we've met with, there was actually several meetings with the administrators, and that purpose of that grant is really on learning loss. In our district, we're really looking at learning loss and learning recovery. So a large part, not all, but a large part of that grant is focused K-12 on reducing class size at the elementary level. At one point, it said transitional classrooms, and we talked with the administrators, and that was really I kept saying, what's the root? What's the root? The root is lowering class sizes so that you can have more focused instruction.
Mhm.
So providing more tutor services for children, some after school support sessions. So it's predominantly staff targeting learning loss. Some materials in terms of intervention, mathematics intervention resources, right? The learning loss across the country and probably world is much, a gap much broader in mathematics than language arts. Language arts is a little bit more sustainable through just more reading practice than math. So that's really the work that we've started to front load into the grant.
I think it's important to kind of just reiterate, ESSER 1, ESSER 2 CRF are really meant to subsidize some of the learning losses that have happened in the district, not necessarily to supplant the Board of Education's budget. And a lot of towns are kind of wrestling with this topic of what do we do with these funds? What's the best use of them? And I think the biggest challenge right now is we don't know, and it's really hard to quantify how much learning loss has happened over the last 12 months. So they're trying to provide, when I say they, the federal government through the state is trying to provide resources to help us catch back up depending on the severity of that. So it is interesting on this, and the allocations are, it sounds like you have the right priorities on them for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, no, they can't supplant Board of Education funds. I mean, they can't, but I don't know that precludes Board of Education input. So for example, if it was town funds, we would be having a discussion about increasing certain kinds of staff or increasing instructional supplies material or increasing professional development. So that's where it's unclear to me if the purview is completely with administration on how to spend this grant money, or if it is intended or able to be, a collaborative experience with the board. That's what my question is, which is probably outside the purview of this meeting, but it obviously impacts us because, right, if this was a regular finance budget, the regular Board of Ed budget, we would be talking about what kind of staff, what kind of PD, what kind of instructional supplies. So maybe we can follow up with that, Mr. Stramello, and see.
Well, I'll just leave it that if the board has set certain standards for education within the town and we know there's a learning loss, that it would fall under the purview of the board to at least be participant and aware of how we're going to make up those metrics and those, make strides that we've lost over the last year. So.
Yeah. Great. All right. We are a bit over. Are there any last minute questions before we close the meeting and move on to our regular Board of Ed?
If you could just share with me, I never received, I think I was off some of the chains regarding those expenditures. The last information I have is over a month old, so I don't know if there's anything new that was published, but.
The report that I put is in the board shared folder for finance and the Board of Ed. I didn't get in there until this morning, so I apologize. And I can email you directly if you don't have a copy of that. And as
I was
far
thinking
as
about the grant expenditure list.
I'd be happy to share that.
Yeah, we can make sure you have an updated one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the financial management summary ending March 31st, 2021.
So moved.
I'll second. Beth Nastiriak seconds.
Okay, so motion made by Ed Schmel, seconded by Beth Stiriak, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All three committee members voted aye. I do not have a chairman's report. Mrs. Tenza, do you have a superintendent report?
I do not. Thank you
Okay.
for David to be here.
Thank you, David,
Thank
so
you.
very, very much for the conversation and walking us through those numbers and for your obvious depth of knowledge. So we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very,
Oh,
very
well,
much.
thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to meet you on Zoom, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Wouldn't
Just
it?
to see everyone in person would be lovely.
I'm just going to brag for a second, and I'm like 2 weeks and a day out from my second shot, so I'm ready to hang out.
Very nice, very
that's
nice.
good.
I've got
That's
some time to go. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will make that.
All right, motion made by Ed Stramello,
Second it.
seconded by Beth Stiriak. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I'll see you guys in a few minutes.
All righty. Right. Kristen's here. Okay. All right, I see enough of us here, so I will call the meeting, the regular meeting of the Board of Ed. To get the Board of Ed regular meeting started at 7:35 by asking all of us to stand up and do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everybody. We will start first up with our high school representatives. Who's going first today? Zach is going first. Okay, Zach.
Oh, hi guys. Hoping everyone had an enjoyable break. It was a much needed break. Today, as we all know, we welcomed back Seymour High School, all the students at Seymour High School, which was a very special day. While talking to the people today, we all came to the consensus that among us that it really felt like this was our first day. I think we all felt that. Definitely a special day. And it was awesome to see some of the faces and that others and I haven't seen for over a year now. So that was great. So to kick off being back, today was our first day of Spirit Week. Today was America Monday. Tomorrow is Tropical Tuesday, followed by White Lie and Meme Day on Wednesday. Thursday is Jersey Day, and Friday we're having our annual Color Wars, where each class decorates their hallways, their respective colors. So freshmen, yellow, and then seniors are black. So we're excited to do that this year too. So we're encouraging all students and staff to definitely participate on the remaining days. The National Honor Society will be selling flowers for Mother's Day too for $2 each. And then I'll pass it off to Karina.
For sports, the golf team won their first match against Sacred Heart Academy today. And tonight is senior day for the cheer. And cheer this season, they placed first at Hattery Feast and their first battle at St. Joe's. Also, congrats to Daisy Calvert, who has won All-State for Class M cheerleader. And track and field has their first meet on Thursday at Wolcott, and softball has started their season with an upcoming game on Friday against Naugatuck. And tennis has begun their practices, and the baseball team won a game tonight. And an overall congrats to the seniors on that team. And that's it.
Okay, Any questions from board members for either of our two student representatives? I don't see any hands or anybody. Who's that? Kristen, okay.
Kristen Harlan, yeah. Not a question, just a comment. It feels so good to hear you guys give what feels like a normal update. So I am so happy for you guys, and just hearing multiple sports and hearing about Spirit Week. Thank you for hanging in there and for sharing the news with us. It feels good to have what feels like a normal update. So awesome.
Okay.
Definitely feels more like normal in a pandemic setting. As close as we can get, at least, to it.
Mhm.
That's it. Any other board members wishing to comment or ask our representatives? Okay, well, thank you. You can stay, or I will give you permission to leave. Your choice.
I'll listen for a little bit.
Okay. All right, Mr. Champagne, public comment.
There actually is none today.
Okay. Then we will move right along to the consent agenda. What is the board's pleasure? Come on, people.
I will make a motion. This is Kristen Harmeling to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, I will ask that if we could remove one item, please, and that would be the D, the staff hiring.
Okay,
Peter Kubic seconds the motion.
Sorry, through the chair, Mr. Chairman. Part B, I'm not sure if we've actually had a financial management summary. It's not attached. It wasn't in the agenda packet, so I'm not sure if we should vote on that.
we do have it. It was on our shared drive. But if you feel strongly that we shouldn't vote on it, but it's there in our shared drive.
Okay, my apologies. It wasn't linked, so there was no notification to go to it. So I apologize.
Okay, so what are you doing then, Jay?
Part B, I know I didn't see it because I didn't know it was in the shared drive. So
So you want it removed, okay. All right, so we had a motion that was made by Kristen and it was seconded by Peter to do the consent agenda. All right, so I will start with Mrs. Bruno.
Point of order, am I voting on the consent agenda with those two items removed?
Yes.
Okay, we didn't have to vote on a motion to remove them?
No, we usually don't. We have them removed.
Okay. Then I'll vote yes.
Okay, then I will go to Mr. Champagne.
Chris Champagne, yes.
Then I will go to Mr. Garofalo.
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Yes, Ms. Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubic, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
and Mr. Stanek.
Fred Stanek, yes.
And Mr. Stramello also votes yes. Okay, I will address my thing first, if you do not mind. When I looked at the application, I noticed Mr. DeStacy is here. I see that it says assistant coach, but on the application, it says head coach. And there were no references. So those are my two questions. So
Or if I may, Mr.
DeStacy-
Stramello,
Yes.
just to bring the board up to date with where we are with track. The candidate that was listed in the consent agenda previously was an assistant coach for our track team. She resigned earlier in the year to take another position. But when the head position became available at Seymour High School, she then resigned from the position she had taken in another district. So that actually should read that Jenny Ames is being brought forward as our recommended candidate for the head track coaching position.
Okay. All right, so then we will need the chair will entertain a motion to that effect. Who moves that?
This is Kristen Harmeling. I make a motion that Jenny Ames be hired as head coach outdoor track upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the athletic director.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll
Mrs.
second
Bruno
it. Kristen Bruno.
Seconds the motion. Okay, and we'll start again with you, Mrs. Bruno. How do you vote on the motion to hire Jenny Ames as head track coach?
Kristen
Outdoor
Bruno, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo abstains.
okay. Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield votes yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubic votes yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes. Motion passes 8 with 0-1 abstention. Okay. Mr. Hatfield, you requested that the management summary would be removed. What's your pleasure now?
I did find it in the drive. I would appreciate, I apologize. I didn't get any notification, but I'll ask Mrs. Harmling to speak to it if everything is in order, as she's the chair of the finance.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for the question. So it does look like we've got a bunch of line items that are running in a deficit, but we are going to take a closer look and make sure that it's not, we suspect it's just a matter of the encumbrance column being a little bit too high. And then David also walked us through where grant monies would be applied. So from my perspective on the finance committee, everything is in order and as it should be, and administration has a great handle on where we are and will be sharing information with us in the months to come, in the weeks to come, really, about expected surplus at the end of the year, where the grant money is intended to go, et cetera. So I really welcome David Fiorillo. Did I say it right? Close enough?
No, you said it great. Well done.
Awesome. Really welcome him aboard, and I can see that he's already got a great rapport between him and Mrs. Tenza, so feel very good about having our kind of pulse on where the budget is.
Okay, Jay is, or anyone else have any other questions of Ms. Harmling?
I think that's it. I just noticed it said it was uploaded into the drive today. So obviously in the future, if we could have that ahead of time.
Not a problem at all.
So I can make a motion.
Yes, I would, just gonna ask you.
You got it. I'd like to make a motion to approve the financial management summary ending March 31st, 2021.
Someone second that motion?
Peter Kubic, second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion, questions? Okay, I see no hands. So I will ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Ms. Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield votes yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubic, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes, carries unanimously. Okay, moving along now to recommended action. First one is the awards committee student representative. Who is making the motion?
I make a motion to approve the recommendation of the high school administration to appoint Victoria Saraceno to the awards committee as a student representative.
Okay, is there a second to Mr. Hatfield's motion?
Kristen Harmeling, seconds.
Thank you. Okay, is there a discussion needed on that? Anyone? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield votes yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic votes yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stromello votes yes. Motion carries 9-0. All right, moving to healthy food option. There's a big, long one. Who makes that motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Stromello. This is,
Okay, you're working very hard today, Mrs. Harmeling.
Ms. Harmeling, I'd like to make a motion that pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 10-215F, the Seymour Public Schools certifies that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups.
Okay, is there a second to Ms. Harmeling's motion?
So
Peter
moved.
Cubic, second.
That was Jay, I heard first, Peter.
It's fine.
Okay, is there a discussion or explanation needed on this motion by anyone? Please speak up. Okay, hearing none, I will again call for a roll call vote. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Ms. Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield votes yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic votes yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stromello votes yes. Again, the motion carries 9-0. Okay, going on to the combined food and beverage exemptions. Another lengthy one. Who's going to give Ms. Harmeling a rest? Come on, people. We got 9 members.
I'll make a motion that the Seymour Public Schools will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And 3, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice meeting or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held.
Okay, that was a motion made by Mr. Hatfield. Is there someone seconding that motion?
Peter Cubic, second.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any discussion needed? That's a lengthy one. Is everybody clear on that? This has been a practice that we've done for years. Oh, So no questions? All right, so then we will go along and vote. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic, yes.
Mrs. Asteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Simo also votes yes. Motion carries 9-0. Okay, we move along to setting the last day of the school. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion, Peter Cubic, to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent to set the 2021 Seymour High School graduation date as June 18th, 2021.
Okay,
Kristen Harmling, second.
okay, thank you. So we had a motion by Mr. Kubik and it was seconded by Ms. Harmling. Okay, any discussion needed? Okay, Jay, do you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Okay, so then we will vote. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Harmling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic, yes.
Mrs. Asteriak.
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Okay, Mr. Stanek
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Simo also votes yes. Motion carries 9-0. Moving to the next one is for the motion. I almost lost my place here. Oh, I forgot, I skipped. My bad. We're supposed to do the graduation date.
That's the one we just did. Now we're going to do the date to end school.
No, but I asked for it to be the last day of school. I didn't, because I think Peter read the last day of school. I'll ask Mr. Doherty if that's what he said.
I thought I read the
Graduation.
graduation.
And
Okay.
I can confirm that.
Okay, my mistake then. Okay. Then we'll go to the one for the last day of school.
So this is Kristen Harmeling. I'd like
Yes.
to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent to set the last day of school as June 18th, 2021, provided there are no further school closings.
Okay. Someone second that motion, please.
Peter Cubic, second.
Thank you, Peter. All right, thank you, Ms. Harmling. Is there any discussion needed on that from board members? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Bruno,
I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo,
Jim Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Ms. Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Cubic, yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak.
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Okay, Mr. Stanek
Fred Stanek votes yes.
and Mr. Simo votes yes. 9-0. Moving right along to the superintendent search consultants.
Peter
Okay,
Cubic, I'll make a motion to enter into contract with Ray and Associates, Inc. as consultants for the search of the new superintendent of the Seymour School District.
okay, is there a second to that motion?
Kristen Harmeling, second.
Okay, just for edification of people who were listening, the board went out for proposals. The chair followed up requesting other proposals because we only had one at the beginning. The board then proceeded to have workshops where they heard presentations from 5 of the people who submitted it. And then the board chair had our board attorney, Mr. Dugas, check it over, made some changes incorporating some of the things that we board members suggested at our last workshop. And he told me that it looks good and it would be appropriate for us to vote on it and then for me to sign it. So that's some history of that. Do any other board members want to make any comments before we vote?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Stramillo.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Ms. Harmeling. Yeah, it was a really well-informed and pretty in-depth review process we went through. We reviewed 6 firms. We spoke with 5 firms. I believe that's accurate in terms of the number of firms.
Yes.
We had, asked generally similar questions, really focusing on what services we would get, because it was really important to us that we acknowledge and understood the different price points that were being presented by various types of firms, to make sure we were doing an apples to apples comparison amongst them with, quality as a driving principle. So I feel great about where we ended up, and I look forward to working with this firm.
Okay, I would echo Ms. Harmon's comment. I thought that we had professional presentations. We had a great opportunity to ask questions. And I'm also pleased and looking forward to work with this firm if we so approve tonight.
Through the chair, if I may. Oh,
Go ahead, Jay. Then Peter next. Go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to thank you for your leadership during this time, because I don't believe that we would have found this firm had it not been for your efforts in solicitation and pushing out the bid, the request for proposals. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for your due diligence and following up and contacting them and all that you did for this process.
Well, thank you. I did today also notify the other firms that were not chosen, and I did get response from a couple of them thanking us. Peter?
I just wanted to also echo what the other participating board members had indicated. We did spend a lot of time listening to each of the presentations, reviewing the initial presentations and listening to the presentations, follow-up presentations that they made for us, and spent a lot of hours, I would say, deliberating to try, to zero in on where we ended up. And I am also very happy with where we ended up. Thank you.
Okay, any other board members wishing to comment? Okay, I will ask for a vote then. Mrs. Bruno?
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes with enthusiasm.
Oh, wow. Mr. Champagne?
Chris Champagne, yes.
Mr. Garofalo?
Jim Garofalo abstains.
Ms. Harmling?
Ms. Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield?
You're on mute, Jay.
Sorry, Jay Hatfield, I vote yes. Thank you.
Mr. Kubik?
Peter Kubik votes yes.
Mrs. Nesteriak?
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek?
Fred Stanek votes yes.
And Mr. Stramillo also votes yes. Okay, now I have some information on the next process, and I'm debating whether to put it under the chairman's comments or to do it now. So I think I'll do it now since we're on the topic. The firm has asked us to look at a first meeting early next week. So I'm going to suggest that we either do it a Monday or Tuesday. And I'm going to ask Mrs. Doherty to do a doodle for that. They said they would need about 1 hour to 1.5 hours. And at that meeting, they will review and we will approve a search timeline. They're gonna review for us, and then we will look at an application that we will approve. We will also review an ad sheet and approval of selected venues where we're gonna advertise. And then also we will advertise the salary, and the company will provide both regional and national salary comparisons. And they would like us to attach a flyer or brochure with info about our district to their website and invitation to apply. And they asked me if we had a public relations person working in central office. I said, unfortunately, we cannot afford that. So we'll have to ask our superintendent and assistant superintendent and the central office staff to come up with something so that we can advertise Seymour as the greatest place in the world for a superintendent to want to come and work at with our great students and parents and teachers and other staff. So unless somebody's willing to take that duty on, Ms. Harmling.
Oh, no, Mr.
Okay,
Harmon is not
I'm
willing to do that.
just teasing, Mrs. Harmon.
I'm a little bit surprised at the ask, to be honest with you. I would have thought that they would have written that for us based on publicly available information on our website and, the stats that they can pull down from the state in terms of district size, et cetera.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
yeah. Well, I guess they're probably looking for any other niceties or things that is, brand, fairly new, a football field, new buildings, just about except for Bungay School, but, things like that. I'm not sure that, well, but we'll find out with the
Okay.
meeting. So please look at your calendars. If Monday or Tuesday do not work, please let us know ASAP and we will try to, but I agree when I spoke to the contact person that we need to get going ASAP to find us a worthy superintendent. So that's why there's a push to do it next week. But I didn't see a problem with that unless as I said, somebody has a big issue. Please let me know. Okay, moving along. Committee reports. You have the minutes from the March 1st meeting there. And I'm not sure, Kristen, if we want to do Ms. Harmling, if we want to do a quick update on today's committee or not.
I feel like in response to Jay's question, I gave a little bit of a synopsis of today's meeting. So unless there are any further questions, I feel like I've shared the important stuff.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions of Ms. Harmling as chair of that committee? Okay, hearing none. Okay, updates. The superintendent vacancy, obviously, I believe we have an update with the vote and what we've done tonight. And we're moving at that. The business manager vacancy, Mrs. Tenza, do you have any update for us on that?
My update is that it's still posted and we're doing rolling interviews as people apply.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Tenz on that? We can't convince David to stay
I try.
permanently.
I'm going to continue to try.
Thank
Okay.
you.
It'll work.
Maybe we'll have to take him out on the town to some of our nice restaurants. Okay.
You're too kind, Ed. Thank you.
All right. Moving along to the chairman's comment. I don't think I have any other comments tonight. I explained the process with the with the search and where we're moving forward with that. So I'm fine on my end. I will ask now for board member comments.
If I may, Mr. Stamella,
Yes, Mr. Stanek, and then Mr. Champagne, you're next.
I've noted in the press that other school districts are sponsoring with the health district clinics for high school students to be vaccinated. I'm just wondering if Seymour is going to participate.
Mrs. Tenza, can you respond to that?
Mr. Wilson began some conversations regarding that, I believe, over the weekend. So I'm sure he'll keep you updated.
Okay, Mr. Stanek?
I certainly hope that we join in those clinics. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Champagne.
I have two. I'll start with one and then we can go around again. Kind of with what Fred was talking about in relation to the clinics. The two clinics that we had, I volunteered for, and it was extremely organized. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the people that came and helped out. So obviously our nurses, Becky Bennett, Lindsay Graylich, Deb Julian, and Lisa Reynolds. And then also we had the health aides, some of the nurse subs. So Andrew Tisdale, Marissa Dioramo, Wanda Horian, Amanda Kitlis, Emily Ryan, Jennifer Torella. And then we had Danielle Dyer, who's an EMT, and then also Brian Ryan, who's an EMT, keeping an eye on all the folks after their shot. So it was really well done, really organized, and hats off to all the medical staff.
Okay, Chris, you can do your second one this time.
Okay, so this one, I was just curious because I was looking at the calendar, trying to do carpooling for myself and my kids and friends' kids and whatnot, and I noticed that the half days ended on Wednesdays, and I think when we had made that back in November, I think we were all thinking that maybe this half day. We would be out of the clear with this COVID. I don't think any of us thought April we would still be in this. So is there any consideration to extending that for cleaning and teacher prep and whatnot through the end of the year?
Mrs. Tenza?
If I may, this is Mrs. Tenza. Thank you for that question. The original reason, just to remind the board, is we ended at the end of April purposefully, actually, because there are so many assessments in May that are still being administered. AP exams, the Smarter Balanced state assessments, the NGSS assessments. And it becomes difficult for the students to have additional time away from the building. It's a little bit more difficult to plan for some of those assessments. Some of them, even the AP exams, those are scheduled statewide times. So as a district, the administrators talked and we felt like protecting the month of May as much as we could if we were back for instruction would be best for students.
Mr. Champagne? Even though we really don't discuss it this time, satisfactory?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we were, we saw letters today and whatnot with a couple quarantines or whatnot. Are we supporting our staff to make sure that they have the time to do what's needed to more or less plan twice?
Go ahead, Mrs. Tenza.
I'm not sure I understand that question in terms of plan twice. Our teachers have used every second of the planning time. I think we've added it up. It was about 40 additional hours of planning time that the board was generous enough to support this year for them on top of all their professional learning time. So, I mean, that was additional time on top of the planning time that they have daily. It's always wonderful to have more. It's the decision of May half days and educational stability, whatever we can salvage for the month for assessments. It's certainly open to board discussion or input.
Okay,
through
do
the
do we want to add to the agenda on this? Because when we do comments, we really usually don't get into a discussion. So if we want to add to the agenda, I will first ask that other people who may have a comment, make their comment first, and then we can add to the agenda if you would like, Mr. Champagne. Okay, any other board members wishing to make comments under the board member comment section of the meeting? Okay, it looks like there is none. So, Mr. Champagne, would you like to add to the agenda?
Sure, I'll make a motion to add to the agenda discussion of resuming half-days on Wednesdays.
I'll
Okay,
second that motion, Jay Hatfield.
Okay, seconded by Jay. Okay. All right, so we're adding to the agenda if we have the approval, starting with Mrs. Bruno.
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes to add the item to the agenda.
Okay. Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes?
Mr. Garofalo,
Garofalo, yes.
Ms. Harmeling,
Ms. Harlan, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubic, yes.
Ms. Nasteriak,
Beth Mysteriak, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stromello votes yes. Okay, Mr. Champagne.
Well, I think I pretty much said what I had to say. I mean, I know that we were originally using that time to do the cleaning and allowing the staff for prep time with these, classes in person. I know with hybrid, and we were at one point having these schools, everybody was distance on Wednesday. I know that stopped and we went to the half days on Wednesday. So, I'm wondering if there's a creative way we can figure out how to do something like this if it's not impacting testing and whatnot. I don't know if we would want to switch up days, having middle of the week was nice because we were able to do that cleaning. That's just my thought.
Anyone else?
Through the chair, I'll defer to Mr. Kubik this time.
Okay, go ahead, Peter.
I just wanted to comment it's my understanding, and I don't know, Vonda, if you can confirm or deny, that the cleanings are ongoing on a daily basis, and there would be nothing additional that would be necessary from a cleaning perspective on the Wednesdays that isn't already being done on a daily basis.
This is Mrs. Tenza. That is correct, Mr. Kubik.
Okay, Mr. Hatfield, is that all right, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hatfield.
Thanks. And so I guess my question would be, I know some schools are still continuing the Wednesday hybrid, half-day model or virtual model. I know my district is doing virtual for the rest of the year for academics. SHOP continues to come in, but for a half day. So testing, you have to work around it. And I hate to be that person, but in 2021, after this year, you know what? Testing, hey, that's secondary to well-being of students and cleaning and all that other stuff in my mind at this point. So what are other districts doing? What solutions or what creative, I shouldn't say creative, but I guess maybe it is creative. What other solutions are other districts doing who may still be remaining hybrid? And you may not know this answer now, but that's some feedback we need to get or put together, I guess, if it's such an issue. I don't know that answer. Again, in my district, it's already been decided we're virtual half days for academics the rest of the year. So we also don't have a lot of AP testing going on, but I'm sure there must be something. Are there changes for AP testing? Are there alternate dates? Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Tenza, do you want to respond to Mr. Hatfield?
I think, for the most part, I can respond. I can't respond. I don't actually know the AP testing times. I do know they tend to be on Mondays and Wednesdays, but obviously districts will work around that. And you're exactly right, Mr. Hatfield. Should the district make the choice to protect Wednesday half days again for the rest of the year, the teachers would absolutely work our schedules around that. That's not a problem. Our teachers and administrators are incredibly flexible.
Okay, I'm gonna put Mrs. Bruno on the spot as an educator in another district. If you could add us any light to what your district is doing.
I don't know that I would reference the district I work in. I would just say that
Well, I did not,
any
you know, this,
decision, any decision, this is what I've learned, any decision is going to make some people happy and it's going to create problems for other people. As a board member in this town, what I would say is that I trust the administration in setting up the schedule in a way that is going to be best for students. So I wouldn't recommend changing the calendar at this point.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Harmling.
I actually forgot that we didn't make it half day Wednesday or early dismissal. Really, we should say early dismissal. It's not a half day. Early
Correct.
dismissal. I thought we had done it through the end of the year, but then I was referenced the calendar, realized we didn't, and realize and remember the conversation that we had about with testing. And so for me, I mean, we're talking about 6 Wednesdays. It's just, if it gives students more time to be in school, and if we think about it, if we give them a shorter day every Wednesday and then we put testing on top of that, then we're even losing more time for instruction and for social emotional engagement and for fun. So I just think that in the spirit of letting the end of the year feel as normal as they can, I mean, the full day option, that's what we talked about at the beginning of the school year. And it was linked to testing and not, being able to accommodate testing while not even losing even more instructional time. So it's only 6 Wednesdays that we're talking about. So I'm comfortable leaving the calendar as is.
Thank you, Ms. Harmling. And anyone else wishing to comment?
Jim Garofalo, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Garofalo.
I would support the administration decisions. We have the students back. They've been out long enough. Let's keep them here. Let's move forward. Let's reduce any of that lost learning that they may have had and give them an opportunity to minimize that to the extent possible with the time remaining to the end of the school year. So I have faith that the custodial staff does do due diligence, that they clean effectively, and let's move forward.
Anyone else wishing to comment? I'm in agreement also that with the administration that we need our children to remain in school as much as possible. All right. Anything else? Okay, then we will move along. Okay. Moving along now to the outdoor track report, superintendent's report. We did all students back in school, I believe. Right, Mrs. Tenza?
We do. I actually, we're so excited to share with you that prior to vacation, we were upwards of closer to, in some buildings, 28% full distance learning, temporary full remote learning. And, we support whatever the families decide to do, whether they keep them home or send them. And we're excited to share that overall, our district is at about a 13% rate of students choosing temporary full distance learning. And it ranges anywhere from 8% at the middle school. The elementary levels are at 12 and 10%, and the high school's at 22% temporary full remote learning. So we have more of them back than even we had thought. We even had a few sneak in today that hadn't even said they were coming back, and we let them come. We're excited to see them. Who thought they'd be sneaking into our building? Never. So we wanted to share that. We're thrilled that we have an outdoor track coach, and it is exciting that all of our buildings are planning some of their end of year celebrations and activities, field days and things like that. They're going to look different, and different is okay. We're really excited that these things are going to happen for our kids because we know that they need them. And, I had sent out just one other little surprise. It was really a surprise for our administrator. The Connecticut PTA sent out some recognitions today, and we have one in Seymour. All of our administrators are excellent and deserving, but David Alekna has been selected by the Connecticut PTA as the outstanding elementary principal for 2021. So we were very proud to share that. Thank you,
Hear,
Mr. Alekna.
Congratulations, Mr. Olekna.
Thank you very much. Many thanks to our CLS PTA for nominating me, and to Ms. Albertson and all the efforts of the CLS staff who absolutely share with me this honor. And it's really their work that makes CLS go. But thank you very much.
Make sure they don't make you pay for your own plaque.
Unfortunately, the only negative thing is I remember when Mr. DeStacy was the assistant principal middle school, we got to go to a dinner. It does not look like we'll be able to attend a dinner, Mr. Elected. Not that like Mr. Stromell likes to eat or anything.
It's virtual.
I know.
I think that's just par for the course these days. So
yeah, unfortunately.
Again, I'm very honored.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Tenza. Any questions for Mrs. Tenza? Yes, Ms. Harmling.
Could we get a little more detail around the working graduation plans and also some of the end of year celebrations, whether it be, the 8th grade field day or the senior day? It just would be great to share with all of us in the community.
Hi, this is Mrs. Tenza. We absolutely are working on those. And again, under the most recent, they keep edging away with more flexibilities from the state. So the closer we get, the better it looks in terms of graduation. What we can tell you now is outside, both middle school and high school. At the high school, outside, there is a rain date. And at this point, it's 2 tickets per child that's graduating. And the other events are emerging. The administrators were very busy prior to vacation, and they're back at it. So we will definitely keep you posted once the details shape up. We're excited.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Harmling.
Could I ask what the rain date is?
The very next date. So it's the 19th.
Oh, it'd be on a Saturday?
Yep, it'd be on a Saturday.
That'd be very cool. Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
10 o'clock
That's
and
great
3
to know.
o'clock.
Great.
Any other questions? Mr. Garofalo.
Yes, I guess this question is more for Mr. Stanek. Do we have a distinguished graduate event this year?
Fred Stanek, yes, we do. The committee met, and the committee is holding Mr. Kearney over from last year because Mr. Kearney was not able to speak at the graduation, and he did not receive the recognition from the community that he would have normally. So we're holding him over this year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other board member questions for our associate superintendent? Okay, then, thank you. We'll move along to the next section. We have information. You have your Seymour Middle School recognitions, Bungay Elementary, Chatfield, Lopresti. Any questions? I see the administrators are here. Any questions for the middle school staff from anyone? Okay, then I will move to for Bungay Elementary. And now to Chatfield Lopresti Elementary. Okay, no questions. All right, then we have our special education monthly enrollment update. Mr. Boyle, would you like to address that?
Sure. One of the things that I suspect, may have caught people's attention is there's been a increase in our students at therapeutic placements, our out of district placements. We had an increase of 2. That's reflective of we did outplace an elementary school student with some pretty significant mental health diagnoses. We had our PPT team working with a psychiatrist to help us with the planning of the student's program. And it ended up resulting in a therapeutic placement for that particular student. The other student, we actually had a family move to town a couple of months ago where they had 2 children, both already placed at therapeutic placements. One of the students we were able to place in the month of March. One of their children will be placed in the month of April. So you'll see another increase of 1 at next month's Board of Ed, with my special ed updates. So that's the increase of 2. For the most part, the remaining numbers, 504 numbers, special ed enrollment in general, special ed hours have remained fairly consistent. We're starting to see, a few more referrals where students are being found eligible for services, but our numbers are still far below what we would typically see at this time of the academic year. We have a lot of students that are currently in the process of being evaluated, but it does look like our enrollment numbers as far as special education will remain below what's typical throughout the remainder of this academic year based on the current trajectory. So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Boyle. Any questions for Dr. Boyle? Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
Looking at the SRBI data, it looks like there's a pretty significant leap in those tier 2 interventions, particularly at the elementary level. Could you talk about that a little bit?
That's really just based more on, as the needs change and as the staff needs change for distance learning, teachers, maybe getting a little more availability, we're able to provide more early intervention services at this point in the year. So we're really trying to capitalize on the staff that we have available to us, and making every moment count. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Boyle? Okay, hearing none, we'll move along.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Garfalo.
I was muted. I didn't realize I hadn't unmuted myself.
And I didn't say your hand in the way, that it wasn't in the picture enough. Go ahead.
Something that Dr. Boyle said piqued my interest, where he mentioned that we had 2 students move into the district. A more general question that perhaps Vonda can answer. Have we seen any influx in our community of additional students coming into our district because of moves that were, let's say, generated by COVID? Now, there were, you read news, people move out of here, there, and everywhere to avoid the problems that were occurring in various states. Did we see a plus of students come in?
Mrs. Tenza?
Sure, if I may, this is Mrs. Tenza. I see the new students coming in and out. Centralized registration is in our office. I would say no to that. I would actually say that we've had more than normal requests from families to the superintendent, please to stay in district until the end of the year, because they have had to relocate elsewhere, either in Connecticut or somewhere else. we haven't had, our influx has been more of a normal rate. Our exiting families has been a little bit more than normal at this time of the year.
Okay, Mr. Garofalo?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll move along to the non-certified resignations. You can see them. Okay, and then we move along to public comment, Mr. Champagne.
Oh, bear with me 1 second. No, I don't have any public comment.
Okay, then the board chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Garofalo, thank you. Is there a second?
Ms. Harmeling seconds.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we put our hands up at least so I can see us all?
Hey.
All righty. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night, thanks.